If you could go back and give your freshman self one piece of advice for school, what would it be?
I would go back and probably stop myself from hanging out with the people I hung out with.
I would tell myself to just wait until you get to Pollard. Don't worry about what's going on at your home school right now. And when you get to Pollard, then just do that grind, and then it'll work out in the end.
To build up the skills, to do new things and engage in school activities, because you never know if you'll find like a new niche.
To not give up, to not feel like you're alone and you don't have nobody to talk to when you need help, that there's plenty of people out there to help you with the stress that you have going into your high school year.
Don't be scared of people.
To put more time aside for school.
School should be a priority.
Yeah, to do your work.
Yeah, same.
Do all my schoolwork.
Are we recording right now? Yo, what up, Lions? This is Mr. Cleveland. Big shout out to my kids in my class for working hard, showing up every day. If I could go back to my freshman year, I would say just be yourself. That's the most important thing. Okay? Don't worry about what others think. Peace.
I would say believe in yourself. Don't believe in the labels imposed on you by others. And con ganas, just go get what I set my mind to do.
I would probably say be true to yourself. Just be yourself. Don't worry about the naysayers. Do what you got to do and stick with your morals.
It's okay. Don't be afraid to take chances. You'll find out where you're going.
Get involved where you can get involved. Don't sit on the back end. Don't watch everybody else. Go out there, have fun, and obviously do your work.
Relax. I was real uptight, and I got in a lot of trouble, a lot of fights, really angry. Just relax, and to know that it gets better.
Thank you. Podcasts are the stories that people take with them everywhere. They help us learn about the world around us.
To hear the stories of those we might never get the chance to sit across the table from, and help us learn that we have more in common than we ever thought.
The students at continuation school are often not heard over the cheers of football stadiums and valedictorian speeches. The podcasts are a way to give them a voice and tell their stories.
These students have stories of trauma, non-traditional home lives, and lessons learned the hard way.
The journalism students of Lee V Pollard High School are tasked with finding a way to tell the stories and those of their fellow students that are being heard.
Welcome.
Welcome. Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome to Unheard Voices. All right, welcome back to Unheard Voices. This is our second episode. We thank you for tuning in. We want to thank all of those who downloaded and listened and shared and commented on our first podcast. We really appreciate that. And go ahead and share that with your friends so we can get our unheard voices heard by more people. So for today's episode, we had the question of if you could give advice to your ninth grade self, or what advice you might give to freshmen, people just starting out in high school, what would it be? So we're going to dig into that topic a little bit today. But before we do, let's go ahead and meet who we are talking with today, starting with
Ray,
Milo,
Ren,
Levi,
Eric. And Eric. Excellent. Thank you. So our first question is, how good would you say you are at listening to advice, and have you gotten better over time?
I believe for me, taking advice, definitely over the years, it's gotten easier for me to take advices, because before, I'd always tell myself that the person that's giving me advice, I always say they don't know everything, but since they're older, they got more experience, they definitely know more than me. So I'd say, yeah, always taking the advice from someone older.
I noticed that you looked at me when you said older, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My fault.
So you mean like Mr. Bates kind of old?
Yeah, Mr. Bates kind of old.
Yeah.
Dude's old. He's like Santa.
Yeah, nice. And it's true, we don't know everything, but we know a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because we've had longer to make those mistakes and learn from them. All right, Milo, what about you?
I think I'm kind of stubborn at it, but I think it depends on the person and how long I've known them, because some people know you better than you know yourself, so they can give just like better advice than you would think of.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to bring up, this idea that we like to think, especially in our teenage years, that we're this unique butterfly. No one has ever gone through our experiences. And while we all are unique individuals, there's a lot of common things that have happened, and people do have insight into us that we don't realize that they have. And I think that's a mark of maturity to be able to identify that. And probably how it gets easier over time is realizing, okay, having that relationship, building that trust between them, you're like, oh yeah, maybe this person does have some insight into me that I may not have about myself yet. What about you, Ren?
I'd say that I agree with them too, because I used to be really like stubborn too when people would give me advice, and I would kind of just like, I would like in a way like block it out because I thought that like they didn't understand my situation, so it didn't apply to me. But now I like seeking out advice from my friends because I feel like, yeah, they do know me in a different way that I know myself. And yeah.
Okay. Levi?
For me, I feel like when I was younger, I wanted to like act so grown up, and like I wouldn't listen to anyone's like advice, and I would rather like had dealt with it myself than ask for advice. But now I feel like I do like seek advice, or even if I don't, like I do absorb it.
That's an interesting thing that you bring up there, that you thought maybe a marker of being grown up was not asking for advice.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask for advice all the dang time. Like I've got my whole group of people that I go to, those trusted individuals, realizing I think that part of being grown up is realizing you don't know everything. And you talked about, they don't know everything. Well, you don't know it either. And so if we get together, we know more. So that's probably pretty good. What about you, Eric?
Well, for me, I do agree with everyone else, but for me, I don't know. It was a lot harder for me to actually listen to advice from other people because most of the time I actually was right.
Oh, there you go.
So,
yeah,
it took me a little longer.
Sometimes you have to think about who you have around you. And it's like, if I'm always the right one, maybe I'm hanging out with some knuckleheads, right? Definitely. All right, so there is 2 different ways you can get advice. You can seek it out, and some of you have talked about that you go out and seek it out. How are you dealing with unsolicited advice when someone comes up to you and says, hey, I need to tell you something, or maybe you should do it this way? Because when you seek it out, you're already prepared for it emotionally. But sometimes, like Milo pointed out, sometimes there are those people that know you better than you think they do, and they see something that you don't even maybe realize is a problem yet. And that doesn't mean that they're always right, just because they give it to you, but do you find it hard to deal with unsolicited advice? And anybody can jump in. We don't have to jump in any order here.
For me, no. For me, I like hearing advice from anybody, even if it's a stranger.
Oh, okay.
I like taking that information and I like evaluating it. It's like, is what they're saying actually true? Does it have could I improve myself based on their observations?
Oh, okay.
Most of the time, no, because it's like, who are you? Why are you in my house?
Why are you in my house? Are you going to fix that window you just broke?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Nice. Anyone else? Who else has trouble dealing with unsolicited advice?
I think you need to have some sort of self-respect in a way, because I've gotten unsolicited advice before where it just doesn't make me feel good, and I'm like, why did you even have to say that?
Mm-hmm.
But I think with the first question, it's also when anyone gives you advice, I think all of our brains are so we all have something to say and we all have something to observe, and they're all different. So I think even in somebody's advice that you don't want to take, there might be something small that you can take from it, and you don't have to listen to it, but you can just take small things.
Oh, I like that. The idea that you don't have to accept everything they say, but there might be something there.
There always is something.
There's always something there. Oh, I like that. That's a good perspective. Anyone else want to jump in?
Normally I take it, but for me, what I like to do is when I get unsolicited advice, I just, all right, let's do it your way. We try it and we see if it works or not. If it doesn't, then I'm never going to listen to you again.
Everybody gets one chance.
Everybody gets one chance.
Everybody gets one chance. All right. Okay. All right. Now, so we've talked about unsolicited advice, but when you want advice, you have a sense that, I've come to the end of my resources with this topic. Who do you tend to ask when you go for advice? I'm going to start with you, Eric.
I don't really have anybody that just hands me advice. I usually just go on the internet and see
Oh,
what
okay.
other people say.
Oh, that's interesting. So expanding your group of people that could contribute.
Yeah.
Okay. Levi?
For me, I feel like it's my friends. I feel like they know me probably more than even some of my family members, because I feel like I show my true self, and they can help me with most situations that I'm in.
And you have that established relationship. Yeah. Very good. Ren?
Yeah, I go to my friends too. I always go to Milo for advice.
Yeah, Milo.
And I don't know. I like hearing what they have to say, because I think everybody has their own way of thinking and their own way of living their life, and it's interesting hearing their perspective.
Sure.
Basically.
Yeah. And they've gone through a lot of the same things that you've gone through. and they also have that perspective of they also kind of know what you can deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you, Milo?
I think it also kind of depends on the person and what I need the advice for.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of it, I think it's my best friend because we understand each other on a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since, like, every time I need advice, I feel like I ask myself first. Like, I feel like I have a lot of knowledge in my own brain.
Sure.
To not immediately go to someone else. But if I do need that extra help, I'll go to someone. But yeah, probably my best friend.
Nice.
I just wanted to add to that when Milo said about like the knowledge, like already having the knowledge. Here's the thing, like maybe you could be going through like a hard time, right? You know, you have the knowledge, but you need someone to help you to guide it.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
Like you have the vision, but it's not clear yet. You know,
Yeah.
it's like no one's like knocking in your head. Like for an example, like you're going through something and like like for example, like this is just an example, right? When you're going through something, just work hard.
Sure.
Right? Obviously, but for some reason it's like not like connecting in your head, right? But when you have someone to tell you like the same thing, that was like, okay, all right, okay, I got it then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's...
And sometimes you need those people to just talk it out. Like, you kind of have it in your head, like you said. But sometimes, like, I just got to talk this out. And then they could say, oh, yeah, but what about? Not like, here's my problem, solve it for me. But, hey, I'm struggling with this, and this is what I'm thinking. Let me talk through it. And then they can kind of fill in the gaps. I like that. We've all talked about where you get sources of advice, how you deal with it. But let's think about, what do you think is the best piece of advice you have received? And did you follow it? I see the faraway look. All right. Levi, you look like you might have something.
For me, I can't remember exactly who said it. I know Ren has said it to me too, but like to stop caring how people like perceive me.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm very much of a people pleaser sometimes.
Yeah.
And like think more about what people want from me than what I want for myself.
Yeah. And that, when it's healthy, can be good. You know, you could be service oriented, having that compassion and that empathy for other people, but it can become unhealthy as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I realized, like, I feel like I don't do it as much as I did before, but I did like put people before myself. And like I thought more about how people were feeling than how I was feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. When we externalize that, and that gives a lot of people power of you who don't necessarily deserve that.
Yeah.
You know, they don't necessarily deserve that influence on you.
Yeah.
All right. Eric, you got something?
Well, for me, wait, what was the question?
The best piece of advice you've received, and did you follow it?
Well, like I said before, I don't really take advice directly. I like dissect it, take parts of it, and then like see what's better for me.
Oh, kind of
So
like
over
what Milo was talking about.
Yeah. So over time, I did just end up realizing I'm just gonna live how I want, irregardless of like what people think of me. It's like if I'm happy, that's all I care about. You know?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Ray?
The best piece of advice I ever got, it's very simple, but someone told me that either you do or you don't. You know what I mean? Like, for example, when you're like hurt or something, you either get up or you don't.
Yeah.
That's it. It's very simple, but it's also so powerful. You know,
Yeah.
it's very moving. It's one of the things that got me through like a few of the struggles that I've had. But no, it's just, you just needed that one simple thing, and that's enough to change your life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, Milo, what about you?
I feel like it's such a broad question. Like, there's so much advice that you could have. Or I think in my own brain, there's so much advice or like help or words or whatever. I don't want to be like stuck up, but I feel like some of the best advices came from myself.
Yeah. And there's something to that, where you sometimes have to stop and take yourself out of the moment and kind of take stock of everything. And then you realize, you know, I can put this together, but if we stay in the moment, sometimes it's hard to get there. So sometimes we need that external one, and sometimes we don't. I think the best advice that I ever got, there's like two parts to it. The first one is that you can't control what other people do, but you can control your reaction to it. So you're not responsible what happens to you, but you're responsible for your reaction to it. And that kind of goes with the second part. Anytime something happens to you, good, bad, whatever, you have to decide what effect that's going to have on you. And it's this idea that either I can use this or I can be consumed by this. So I can use this to grow, to learn, or I can be consumed by it and let it overwhelm my life. I don't know how good I am at always living that way, but I think that's definitely the best advice that I've gotten over time. All right, so when we think about learning from advice, we often seek out advice or we often receive advice after we've messed something up. That's often when we seek it out. We're not often seeking advice like when we just like we ace a test and we're like, please, I need advice on this. We figure it out. But connected with advice is this idea of how well do you think you learn from your mistakes when you get that advice? Or does it take a while? Do you need time to process it? Or, how quick are you to receive that advice and adapt to it?
Ooh, for me, it took years to learn from my mistakes, Like, here's a little piece about me. I took anger management 3 times. Those first few times it failed, but I thought I was good on the second one, but had to take it the third time. But no, that takes years to fix those mistakes.
Yeah.
And I didn't fix all of it, but I got most of it, though.
Yeah.
Most of it, that's good.
Right. What about you, Milo?
I hate to say that all my answers depend, but I do think everything depends. I think everything is so subjective.
Sure.
Especially
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, with what you're learning from. But I think all of them do take time to process. Some take months of messing up and observing that I messed up and then messing up again and messing up again until it just comes to me one day.
Sometimes it takes a while of us hitting our head against the wall.
Yeah.
And we're like, wait a second, this hurts. I was like, oh, don't hit my head against the wall. Oh, yeah. No, I see that.
And hurt it again.
Yeah. And sometimes we still go back for more.
Yeah.
Trial and error.
Trial and error.
Yeah.
There's something about sometimes we have to learn in our head and sometimes we have to learn in our heart. And those two don't always talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can intellectually understand something, but we haven't made it part of who we are. And so we still run into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you, Ren?
When it comes to learning from my mistakes, I think I'm the type of person who keeps making the mistake, keeps going back to it. And I don't know. I can't think. Hold on.
That's okay. We'll come back to you. Levi.
For me, I feel like in the past, when I would make a mistake, I almost had a victim complex, which is honestly kind of a very normal human response.
Sure.
But and I would kind of blame the other person, or I would just try to make it seem like that. But I feel like as I've grown as a person, I feel like I can acknowledge my mistakes. And again, with Milo, it depends on how big that mistake is or whatever, how long it takes to process it.
Sure. All right. Eric?
Well, for me, I still have a lot of trouble, learning from my mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's I like Ray. I guess I also have anger issues. Still have them. They're still there, but they're better now. Even after years of trying to control that,
Sure.
still hasn't stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, it's our emotions sometimes get the better of us. Definitely. And they can cloud our thinking, and sometimes it's almost cliche, the whole count to 10 thing. That's the most cliche advice, but it's surprisingly effective. And I would especially say that's true. Here, I'll drop some advice on you guys, is count to 10 or 100, or for some of you, 1,000,000 before you respond to what happens online, right? Mm-hmm. How quick you drop the response to a text or something in a forum or something like that, because so often it is taken out of context, or we don't take the time to think about what state of mind is that person in when they make that statement. Mm-hmm. When we're like, oh, they were in a different place. And if I take a moment to see where were they, I was like, okay, I can let that go. Right. So that's definitely a thing.
I think it's also very okay to be in a place of mistake and not know if you've learned from them or not. I think that's just you're in the error part. But I think, or at least I hope and believe, that humans always go back to a trial part and thinking, because we have the brain for it.
Yeah.
So hopefully we learn from it eventually. But whenever I see someone making mistakes or in a mistake part of their life, I understand it because I've been there before, and also depends on what you're going through on the outside or inside or whatever, and it can affect everything. But thank God we have our brains.
Yes.
I think.
You bring up a good point. It's not one of these questions, but I think we're going to go this route. Is when do you give advice?
Oh, I spit advice.
Oh, nice. I like it.
Crazy.
Well, that's why we had to have you on the podcast.
Yeah.
So what are the are you, let me rephrase that. Are you, I think, yeah, you've already answered that for me, but for everyone else, are you quick to give advice? What do you think, Ray?
I'm not really too quick to get advice. Maybe like give them some time to figure it out, and when they're really stuck, that's when I try to give them advice. But there's also like different kinds of advices I give. Like when it's something like small, like obviously, oh yeah, just do this, right? But with some other people, sometimes like when they're like when I'm really close to them, sometimes I give them like the little bit of tough love.
Sure.
Because there's things like you could get out of this. I'll tell you that right now. You could get out of this, but you just need that extra push.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you just need to go through it.
Yeah, there is sometimes. So as a teacher, I sometimes see students making mistakes. Big surprise, right? And there's times when I realize, okay, I think with this person, they're ready to hear me. Or they're ready to hear something, whether they're ready to hear from me or not. And sometimes, you know what? Sometimes you got to learn the hard way. So as a teacher, we have to balance that of when do we give advice? Are they ready to receive it from us? Because relationships with teachers can always be difficult. It's like, oh, but you're that person, you failed me on my last test. You're terrible. But then, we have those moments. We have opportunities to be an adult and give advice that sometimes parents don't have, because sometimes relationships with parents are very fraught. And so we have sometimes that opportunity to be able to be a person who can give advice. But there is definitely that choice of, are they ready to receive that yet? Or is this something they've got to learn on their own? And I know as a parent myself, having teenage kids, sometimes I'm like, just listen to what I said. I know the answer. And they're like, you know nothing, Dad. All that good stuff. I'm sure none of you guys have gone through that. So, all right. Anyone else? How do you, like, Eric, are you quick to give advice?
Not really. I usually just let them go through it first, and then it's like if they can't figure it out, then I'll start helping them.
Yeah,
I'll start
kind of giving them a
guiding
chance
them a little bit.
Yeah,
because like the best experience is a teacher. My fault. Like the best teacher is experience.
Ray, you want to be at the front of the class, don't you?
Sorry about that.
It's all right. Well, go ahead.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Levi.
I feel like for me, I kind of have to like read the situation well before giving advice, because I don't want to either like give them bad advice, or some people like aren't in the headspace to listen to certain advice. So I have to really read the situation before giving advice, so I don't feel like I'm as quick as I should be sometimes when it comes to advice. But I also want to give, like, depending on the person, like, space.
Yeah. And sometimes the people we care about is hard if we give them advice and they don't receive it, or they snap back at us because they're feeling all their emotions about their situation. They may snap back at us that has nothing to do with our advice, but they're all in their emotions as well. So sometimes it's like, it can be a minefield, but that's part of relationships, I suppose. All right. So the big question, we went out and we asked this of our fellow Lions. And so now you guys are on the hot seat. So if you could go back in time and give advice to your freshman self, what would you say? Or what advice would you give to an 8th grader getting ready to start high school? Because you guys are at the end of your journey. Let's be honest, we've all made some mistakes on our journey to get where we are now. And so you guys have learned some things because you guys are all finding success. Where before maybe we struggled to find some success, and you guys are finding success now. So you've learned, you've hit your head against that wall a number of times. Let's start with Ray. What would you say? Either to the 9th grade version of you, or 8th graders about to finish middle school.
Well, I mean, if I had the chance to go back in time, it's like I wouldn't really use it at all, because it's what makes you who you are today.
Oh, that's a good point.
So I wouldn't really make any changes. But for the 8th graders that are starting high school, one big advice I could give them is, it's like basically the whole thing. Ask for advice. You're gonna be. Cause I remember when I started high school, I was so like self-centered. It was always about me. But no, in reality, just there's like a lot of people that know a lot of things that you need to know. So yeah, always ask for help. Don't think that when you're asking for help, you feel weak. No, that's just gonna make you better.
Nice.
So that's my advice.
That kind of jumps into our Lions lessons. We talk about navigating the difficulties of life. Part of it is know to ask for advice. All right, Milo, what about you?
I think it's like also being stubborn as a freshman or 8th grader. Like, I could get advice, but I feel like it's kind of irrelevant because I don't think I would listen to it. I don't think like most 8th graders are.
Would you listen?
Freshmen.
Would 9th grade version of you listen to 12th grade version of you?
I don't know. I don't know if I would. Maybe, but I feel like at the same time is also what Ray said, like you have to go through the experience to learn it.
Sure.
So I feel like I've gotten so much advice before that I've deemed like important like years later. Back then I was like not listening to it because I literally did not have the experience to understand it and like believe it.
Yeah.
But I think the only advice would be, since my grades sucked so bad, I think I would just say like take some time apart for grades or school.
Okay. What about you, Ren?
I agree. I agree with Ray because I think all the mistakes and like or the decisions that I made from then till now, they just make sense to me because that's who I am. And about advice, giving advice to my 8th grade or freshman self, it wouldn't have worked because I would take advice, but I wouldn't put work into
the advice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I would know that's what I needed, but I just wouldn't like ever put in any effort.
That would be like you would intellectually get it, but you wouldn't absorb it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's not that you would disagree with the advice, but you wouldn't make it part of your own.
I feel like it's so natural to not listen to it either.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's sometimes what you always need to do, especially if you're a younger person.
Yeah.
Is just know it, but not have the ability to absorb it because you literally do not have the ability yet.
Yeah. I think you brought up an interesting point with your answer, Milo, is you talked about there's advice that I received that I needed time to understand. And I think that's true. Yeah. All right, Levi, what you got for us?
For me, I think for my 8th grade and freshman self, because I feel like that time was such, like I was like the same person. Like I don't know how to explain it, but like I feel like I was just like a very like different person back then. And for me, I feel like I would probably try to tell myself to not be so like care so much about the social life of high school.
Yeah.
And try to like have a good like balance of like education and like social life, because I feel like it ended up like causing like my academic downfall in a little bit.
Oh,
like,
okay.
In a way. But yeah, that's probably what I would say to myself.
So kind of like a better work-life balance.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty good. I like that advice. All right, and Eric, you're gonna bring us home.
Hold on, I'm stretching.
Yeah, it's a big stretch. Guys, be prepared for this. This is gonna be something huge.
All right. The advice I would have for my 8th grade self, or just any 8th grader.
Yeah.
Just the one piece of advice: please listen to your friends or listen to people, irregardless of what or who they are, because you will regret it not listening to them. You will regret it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You'll always remember that.
All right.
You didn't listen.
I think I see a theme there. Like, I think we bookended it. I like it. Ask for advice and listen to it, because there's people that have different experiences, and there's a lot of us out there who care about you guys. So we got good advice for you. Hopefully, we'll find out. All right. Trying to think if I had something. I think mine is probably connected to similar to what both of you guys have said, and bringing it all together is ask for help. Learn to ask for help when you need it. That was probably the hardest thing for me to do as well. And it was probably because same thing, I thought I knew everything, right? It took even into college, and I think I mentioned this last episode, almost getting kicked out of RCC twice for grades before I finally swallowed my pride, because I thought, I know what I'm doing. I can do all this. And actually meeting with a counselor who got me on the right path and said, no, this is what you need to do. What you've been doing is stupid, and you've wasted time here, and you've wasted money. So you're paying for it. Let's get smart about this. So I think it's the same thing. Yeah, it's definitely ask for that advice. All right, so that's going to finish up our second episode. We thank you for tuning in. And for our next episode, a little preview here, we're going to be looking at and talking to students about what kind of things do they wish that they had at continuation high schools that we didn't have. We're always looking to see new ideas and new things that would excite you guys. But what are the things that we're missing? What should we start thinking about going forward? All right, thank you so much, and we will see you next episode. Unheard Voices is a Pollard production podcast brought to you by the hardworking journalism students of Lee V Pollard High School. Unheard Voices is made possible by the generous support of the administration and staff of Lee V Pollard High School, with special thanks to Tony Sandell and Justin Robert Young. You can find this podcast on the Lee V Pollard High School website, our YouTube channel, and other podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thank you for listening. Now I can confirm that we are recording like a dummy. Okay, so once again, I'm not going to do the sound pad. We're just going to go straight into it so you guys don't have to sit here and try not to laugh because I saw all the looks on your faces.
If you could go back and ask your freshman self, or wait, can I read the question?
Oh, good one. Oh, am I being recorded?
You can say, well, I can use this, or I can be, oh, so close. Well, dang, you're slow. I know, I totally messed it up. I wasn't even thinking.
Mr. Collins, that's the sound of somebody not cooperating.